Hello and welcome to the Performer's Guide. My name is Kristen Railing, and in this video, we will be discussing nonprofit organizations. There's essentially two different ways that you can interact with a nonprofit organization. One is you could become one. You yourself could file for tax exemption and become a nonprofit organization and gain all of the benefits that a nonprofit would receive. Or you can find an already existing nonprofit organization and ask them to fiscally sponsor you if funding is your main interest. And so essentially, I go over in more detail during the previous video of business structure options in the Think Like a Business online course, but we'll just go over a little bit more detail about nonprofits in the fact that you get tax exemption. So you're not paying taxes. If that's what you're hoping to do is get full tax exemption, you're gonna wanna become a nonprofit organization. But if you're just wanting money and you see a funder, grant, donor, and they only work with nonprofit organizations, then fiscal sponsorship might be the best route for you. And so that's what we're going to cover more thoroughly in this video, is the differences between becoming a nonprofit and fiscal sponsorship. If you want more detail about the benefits of becoming a nonprofit, you'll want to watch the previous video. So first option you have is to become a nonprofit organization yourself. And I've actually worked with a lot of nonprofit organizations and have worked with them on a lot of different levels, actually. So I've been on the board of directors. I've been in high positions within a nonprofit organization that run in coordination with the board of directors. I've just worked for companies and been an independent contractor through a nonprofit organization. And I've also myself received funding through fiscal sponsorship of nonprofit organizations. And so I'm going to try to break down as much knowledge as I've received over my past 10 years of working with nonprofit organizations to try to make this process a little bit easier for you. So nonprofit organizations are tax exempt organizations that operate similarly to businesses, but for-profit businesses, but are a little bit different in their structural organization. And so it's important to really understand the differences between just running a regular business for profit and running a non-profit organization. It's a little bit more entailed than just a different paperwork and more money when you're filing, but there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle that need to be worked on throughout the year, making sure that you are within legal parameters to operate as a nonprofit organization. And so we're going to go over some of these here. So some things that are really important for you to operate as a nonprofit organization in order to file for tax exemption, you will need to provide your bylaws, which are essentially the guidelines and the rules for how your nonprofit organization functions, and would include your business plan and business model of your nonprofit. And you'll want to appoint directors. It's a very specific term that is different than a manager or other position titles held in a normal business. You would appoint directors who are to hold meetings called the board of directors meetings, and they are essentially running the nonprofit organization, but nobody necessarily owns the nonprofit organization. And so this is one big difference between owning a business and a nonprofit organization, is that the business becomes outside of yourself and is then beholden to the board of directors, which you could become one of, or you could step out of that role as well, or be voted out by the other board of directors, sometimes whether or not you wanted to, right? And so this is one thing you really want to think about as well when bringing on board of directors and directors that you're going to work with, and whether or not that's the right option for you to file. That's usually one consideration people think about. The next thing you're going to want to have for your nonprofit is 3-year financial projection of your budget and spending and your financial plans. You're also going to want to have a solid narrative and explanation of what your programs and activities are for your nonprofit, so that when you're getting funding from outside sources, you're able to explain that well. You're also going to need to have full copies of all of your organizational marketing material and proof of fundraising efforts. So one of the main benefits of having a nonprofit organization is that you are able to fundraise capital and then not pay taxes on them, and then show the way that you're spending it is towards the business or the community. And so you're going to need to have really solid record of your meetings that you're holding with your board of directors, and B, the money that you're spending, how it's going in and out, because it's a public business and people are going to want to potentially see those records. And if you don't have those on hand, then the IRS may, you might have a conflict of interest there. And so you want to have a conflict of interest policy set in place for your nonprofit organization, just in case, especially if any of the board of directors have disagreements. You always go back to the written documents that you've written in the bylaws, in your projections, in the materials that you've written. And so these are the kinds of things you really want to make sure you're keeping track of during the year very precisely. Then you're going to need to actually apply for tax exemption. And so remember, we have both federal taxes and state taxes. And so there's 2 different types of tax exemption status that you will need to file. And these are the forms. Form 1023, it's the application for recognition of tax exemption. And then Form 2828, power of attorney, and articles of incorporation. So I have these links here, and they'll be available down below in the module as well. Oh, and here's some examples of what those forms look like, which will also be down below in the modules available for download. And then you're going to need to apply for state tax exemption as well. And so remember, there's state and federal taxes. So this form is Form 3500 exemption form. And then you'll also need to pay a check, it depends on what state you're in, to the franchise tax board with a copy of the documents detailed both earlier, of the bylaws and the other forms that you've been required to fill out thus far. And then the state will determine what type of nonprofit organization you are, okay? So you can see this process is sort of daunting, right? It's a lot of forms. It's a lot of precision in the way that you run your business, and you have to be someone who has good income expense reports, who has good writing skills, who has written their business model, their business plan, and is able to execute getting funding for a business, and is able to fill out a lot of forms. And so these are things you're going to want to think about when you're choosing business partners for a nonprofit organization, or excuse me, your board of directors and other directors in this business. People who are organized and are able to fill out forms and help you progress the business instead of being a deterrent. Sometimes it can be daunting to do all these tasks alone, and you want to make sure you have a solid team to help you with that as well. So here's some more examples of the state forms, and just one. I'll have all of those examples down below for you to download and look at as well. So if you just listen to all that and was like, wow, it's pretty daunting, and I don't know if I necessarily want a full tax exemption, I just would like to utilize nonprofits to gain more funding for my business. Fiscal sponsorship in the beginning is a really great way to partner up with nonprofit organizations, allow them to take you under their wing and learn so much about the nonprofit organization strategy that I highly recommend that even if you still listen to that video or to the beginning part of this video and thought, yes, I'm 100% wanting to become a nonprofit organization, I still recommend going down the fiscal sponsorship route if you currently have nonprofit organizations. Love helping other nonprofit organizations start and help people start new businesses. And they love to help smaller businesses gain funding through their fiscal sponsorship programs, because they can also get a portion of the proceeds. And so fiscal sponsorship is really a win-win-win for both the donor, the nonprofit organization, the recipient, and the community. And so I'm just a big advocate of fiscal sponsorship, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people have heard about. So I'm going to say it again. Fiscal sponsorship is a wonderful option for anybody who's looking to get into the nonprofit realm. And so what is fiscal sponsorship? Sometimes people get confused how fiscal sponsorship differs from owning a nonprofit organization, and they also get confused how fiscal sponsorship varies from just sponsorship and being sponsored. And so fiscal sponsorship is specifically tying your business to a nonprofit organization so that you can pull funding from a specific pool of funding that is only available to nonprofit organizations, and the money goes through their channel, the nonprofits, making it tax exempt. And so this is just a lovely way to create relationships with you and nonprofit organizations in a way that is just fiscally and energetically mutually beneficial. And so the best way to apply for a fiscal sponsorship is to find somebody in your current sphere of influence that you know, you're familiar with, you work with them, you like them, their domain and aims are within your domain and aims, you have similar core values. You probably already know people who work in a nonprofit organization who would be more than happy to fiscally sponsor you and show you the ropes on how to start a nonprofit organization, at least point you in the right direction for where you live. And so just a few examples of people you might already know are theater owners, in which you've already performed in, libraries, which you frequent or perhaps have performed in, community organizations that you're a part of, and professional societies that you attend. So a lot of times if you're attending an event or you know someone who owns a business or you see a business, they might be a nonprofit organization, and through casual conversation, you could find that out and then lead the conversation to fiscal sponsorship. And if anybody has any questions about getting fiscal sponsorship, the Performer's Guide does offer more private tutelage and mentorship on this, and have gotten many clients fiscal sponsors. So now you want to decide which of these options fit your business best, and they both could at some point. I've gone down the fiscal sponsorship route, and I've also gone down the nonprofit organization route. And for myself, I almost got to the starting of it and then realized it was a different business model and different interests, and we just didn't see it all the way through. But I'm very happy that I did, because I have a greater understanding of it now. But I've also helped a lot of people make that leap and start nonprofits, and they're a wonderful business endeavor, but it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of commitment. And so you just want to make sure that you're ready for that commitment before you jump in and play with fiscal sponsorship for a little bit while you think about it. Okay. Thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, my name is Kristen Railing with the Performer's Guide.